Huge thank you to CIBC for making We Get It possible. Good day, everyone. Good evening if you're catching this live on Facebook. My name is Karine Chalifour. I'm the program director with Young Adult Cancer Canada, and this is a new episode of We Get It. We Get It comes live on Facebook every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, lives on our YouTube channel for all the episodes, and we are, I promise it's not a lie, working on transitioning all of those awesome episodes into podcasts so you can listen to it anywhere you are. So welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Today I am wearing my hair up. I have like curled even the little side of it and wearing my San Francisco earrings that are pink and I love them, and a black shirt, and I'm in my home office and once again in Newfoundland today where I am anyway. We're coast to coast today, as you'll see, but it is a beautiful day. It's sunny and it's actually warm enough to crack open windows a little bit. So I'm welcoming that because in March in Newfoundland, that's usually not the case. And I am in beautiful, wonderful company. I'm with Amber Pywell. Amber, thank you for being with me today. I'm so happy to see your face.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and Amber and I, so Amber will introduce herself, but today, me and her, we're going to learn a little bit about Amber and her story and connection to cancer, but we're also going to spend some time talking about being a death doula. So Amber did a training recently, and that's one of the many role and things she does in her life. So we'll discuss that and have this conversation today. So thank you, my beauty. How are you?
I'm really good.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be here. I'm on the West Coast, so
Yeah.
opposite side of the country.
Yeah.
I've been wearing sandals for months. I'm sorry.
I know. Well, you wear sandals in the winter, don't you?
I do.
So it's not really a good, but whatever. I know. You have flowers and everything out there.
We do. All the trees are starting to bud.
Sure. Rub it in.
Yeah.
How about you tell us a little bit about yourself and your beauty and how you look and where you are and a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So my name is Amber. I have a quite long, dark, brownish black hair that I put a ton of hairspray in to make it look very luscious and full as it flows around my face. I've got a beautiful leopard shirt on with my cat eye eyeliner, trying to look good for you, Karine.
You succeeded.
Yes.
You succeeded.
So I was diagnosed with papillary thyroid cancer with a follicular variant at the age of 34, so 5.5 years ago. At the time, we weren't really sure. I kind of went undiagnosed for 8 years. And when we had surgery, we weren't sure where things were at. And it ended up that it had metastasized to lymph nodes. And now I live in a beautiful gray area of we don't really know if there's active cancer or not. So we sit and wait.
Yes. And you've been sitting and waiting and learning how to do this for a while now, which I know is not easy. And I know a lot of the people watching, I know some of you and many of you actually might be in a similar situation, which is hard at times for sure, not to know and to figure out how to enjoy fully life in these in-betweens, tests and in-betweens moments of asking for clarity and answering questions of your health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you've been connected to YACC. So I was trying to remember, like your first retreat, was it 2014?
It was 2015. So I was diagnosed in 2014. I had surgery and treatment up until December. And I think January or February, I came to a retreat.
Yes. And Amber has been connected since then. She's done every single event at YACC. We climbed the mountain together and cursed at that mountain together, and did some retreats and conference, and also has been such a huge support as a local life leader in Victoria, helping us out every time we ask, which we so appreciate. So you're well connected to the community, which is wonderful. And I love, so you're a mother of 3 beautiful kids and a wife and a worker and a friend and someone who's living with the uncertainty of cancer. But is it in the last 2 years that you started your journey to become a death doula?
Yeah, so I went September, not last September, the year before.
Yeah.
And I did the course. And then when I got back, we had some major family stuff happening. So it kind of postponed really starting things up. And then COVID hit. But it hasn't totally stopped me. And I've still kind of found ways to be with people and support them in whatever ways I can, even through COVID. So I'm pretty grateful for the options or the opportunities that I've been given, just to sit with people and be with them. So
this is great. Like for those of you watching and wondering what is a death doula, I feel like in our society in general, we've heard more of birth and doulas who help with giving birth to a child and all of that. But ultimately, can you tell us a little bit about what is a death doula? What is that?
yeah. And so they first started calling it a death doula, and some of them have started to switch into an end of life doula,
Okay.
because death, sometimes just that word really scares people. And that's part of what drew me into this, is that my relationship with death now is a very healthy one. When I was younger, I found I really struggled with the finality of it all, and I couldn't really wrap my head around it. Whereas now, I have a much deeper appreciation for what that is and what that can allow you to live your life as. And it's something that we talk openly with our children. We're very open about cancer and the different types of cancer and the varying degrees of severity for cancer, so that they know that when someone is diagnosed, it's not necessarily going to end their life. Sometimes they can recover, but they also have a front row seat to it. Sometimes it takes a long time to recover, and they see that in their mom all the time.
Yeah.
But so end of life doula, there's kind of like a huge spectrum of what they can actually do. So lots of times they can step in before you're even diagnosed terminal with any disease. If you're just getting on in age, or if you just want to be super proactive when you're younger, there's steps that we can do to help you do your advanced care planning. It's things they can do to make sure that your medical and health wishes are upheld towards the end of life, or should an accident happen, it makes your wishes known to your friends and family and your doctors. They can help direct you into where your supports are. So depending on what you're looking for, depending on what kind of supports you need, we can have a huge array of ideas for you to kind of tap into. And then it also can go into meeting with people that have been diagnosed with a terminal illness. And we can help you kind of work through what's important and how you want things to play out. And then you can make a plan kind of towards end of life. An end of life doula can step in, and they can do respite for your family, so they can step away, and then you have somebody else to sit bedside that knows them, that cares about them, that will make sure that they're taken care of. So it kind of goes a broad spectrum of whatever they're looking for and whatever supports they need. And sometimes they want to do that so you can support their family, so the burden isn't solely on them.
This is so neat. You said a lot of things that I want to revisit, in the sense that even starting with you reflecting on your own relationship with death and dying. And I think it's not necessarily something we're invited to do in general. And we know in our young adult cancer community, pretty much everybody I spoke to has said, well, my mortality was smacked, you know, in my face all of a sudden, and I had to think of things and revisit and figure out how I felt about it and what my relationship was with it. But as we know, it's not everybody, and of course people who love us and people want to protect, much different to have a conversation with them about that. But it's super important, isn't it? Like I heard a lot of people, to your point, not even terminal, having conversations about their wishes, saying how much of a relief it was for them to say, I feel such a relief that now people I love know what I want. But it's not something that we do very easily or naturally. Like, what do you think? Is it fear, or why aren't we more inclined to talk about what our wishes would be, even if we're not dying?
Yeah, I think as a society, we've kind of gotten away from the way it used to be. So a long time ago, if you had somebody who was sick and actively dying, you didn't ship them off to a hospital. You kept them home, and they were surrounded with family, and you would bring in the support that they needed. And even often, back in the day, they would keep the body at home for a few days after they passed so that people can come by and say their goodbyes. And it was something that was embraced and talked about, and everybody engaged in it, the children, the parents, everybody. And now we've gotten to this place where there's kind of so much like sensory around it, where it is kind of shipped off. So it's just kind of shifted as a society, I feel, to be something you don't talk about, and you just kind of like hush, and you keep it in the hospital. And there's even lots of cases where because of how we've become as a society, you'll have children in with their elderly parents, and they'll want to kind of discuss their condition or their issues outside the room instead of engaging the person who's actively dying. And it's such a tragedy to take them out of their own death. They should have control in that space, and they should have a voice, and it should be talked about instead of just kind of hush hush. So I feel a shift happening, and I hope it keeps gaining momentum and keeps going, because it is inevitable, and I hate to spoil it, but everybody's going to die. So it's a 100% mortality rate. So why are we not talking about it? Why are we not, making your wishes known? My brother-in-law had a tragic accident, and when he passed, nobody knew what he wanted. It was never a conversation that was had. Did he want buried? Did he want cremated? Did he want to donate his organs? All of these things we had to make choices for him. And it was so difficult on the close family because it was never discussed. And so, just even having these discussions and talking about advanced care planning, it just makes such a huge difference for your family to know exactly what you want. And I know for me, after I was diagnosed, the thing that hit me the hardest is that I had to drive from Victoria back to Cobble Hill. And the Malahat Road is a very, it's always got accidents on it. And what hit me the most at 34 was, oh my God, I could get into a car accident and die on my way home. And I was terrified.
Yeah.
When, 20 minutes before that, I just thought, oh, I'm going to live till I'm 80. Like, I'm so healthy. And so you're suddenly hit with the reality that, this could all be taken away at any time. And so even leading up to surgery, I had plans. I had letters written to my kids. I had stuff recorded so they could listen to it. I told my husband, this is what I want, like, you make sure. And I didn't want to leave anything as a question, just in case something went wrong, which it didn't. I'm here. But if I can help other people kind of take care of some of that planning bit and support them and just make them feel not alone in that, and just to be comfortable to talk about it. There's still people that I talk to and they're like, nope, I don't want to hear about it. They're so, emotionally shut off to death or what that means. And that can come from so many different things. But, to have somebody, if you're ready and willing to talk about it and to be very frank and, to be like, I'm dying, and to have somebody go, okay, what can we do? Instead of, no, don't talk like that. Don't say that, which just makes somebody go inside themselves even more. And then you're even more isolated on an already isolating experience.
Yeah. And talking about it doesn't make it happen. Like, sometimes I think we have these irrational connections in our heads of, I've heard that a lot for people who are grieving and who had lost someone, who would say, nobody's asking me about the person I lost, because it's like, well, I don't want to make you think about it. As if I fucking don't think about it all the time. So it's not like talking about it triggers some things necessarily all the time, but I feel like there is this irrational connection of, well, if I talk about what I want when I die, I'm going to die quicker. Where really that's just so we're all clear, that is not an equation. Nobody in the universe has done that formula.
No.
But I think there's some of that in there of like, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to make it happen.
And it's uncomfortable. It's not something we're used to talking about, and just to be able to actually voice kind of your fears or your concerns, and then you don't want to add that burden to your family members, or like, it's so complex. And I'm hoping we get to a place where it's talked about, and that journey, the whole journey, can be celebrated. And sometimes it's way harder when, especially in our community, when it's a young adult. It's earth-shattering for so many people. And to be able to talk about it and have support along the way, that's kind of where I feel drawn to, is more kind of anybody that's been diagnosed with cancer, because there's that kind of commonality there that, you know, I can sit and I can just listen, and it's, you know, people feel that I get it because I've been through my own sort of journey. So that's kind of where I feel really drawn to kind of step in and help in that capacity. So
because I know that advanced care plan are, I'm thinking in the future, it would be great to do an episode even on that. But there's also like, to me, what really kind of lights up my brain and my heart is also figuring out. So for example, let's say, because are not invited to think about what we want a lot in the context of dying, how do you accompany someone in figuring this out? Like, you know, it's like if you ask me on the spot, some things I know, like I want to be cremated. I want to definitely donate my organs. So if anyone is, you know, this is my free will.
yeah.
But there are things that I would need to think about it. And I think there are things that I was remembering hearing of you sharing some things around music, around all kinds of things. How do you help people get clarity on that? Is there a process as a death doula or end of life doula?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. There's a couple of resources that are available. So there is this My Voice book, and this is from the government. You can download it online, and this has the legal stuff. So this has, if you want to put into place somebody to act on your behalf should you become, you know, unconscious and that sort of thing. It has kind of all of those laid out. It has all the medical sides of it. It has, if you have a religion or if there's a spiritual practice, you can put all of those things in here. But there's also this really awesome book that I have, and it is called 7 Tools for Making Sense of Life and Death. So there's also a free version online, and I can send you the link. And essentially it's like a heart will. So it goes through and it asks you very specific questions to find out what's important to you, because a lot of times people don't think about it. So, you know, it even brings up the questions like, at the end of life, what's more important to you, to be pain-free or to be awake? Do you want to be touched? Do you want music to soothe you? Do you like scents? I do not. I would have a headache until the moment I passed, and I would be so mad, I would haunt everybody. It's not a good thing. But these go through kind of all of the really important things. It even gets into forgiveness, and it starts to ask you, like, are there relationships that you want to mend before you go? What can you do now so that you can pass with peace in your heart? Like, it kind of goes through so many different things that I wouldn't even have thought to kind of look at myself. And it just gives you a huge chance to reflect and figure out what's important to finish in this life. And then there's lots of stuff that, you know, I just simply go over and, you know, what are your preferences and what things do you like? What do you hate? What do you not want to have around? Kind of all these little pieces that, you know, whether they're, you know, unconscious on pain meds, you know, if there's still an awareness of what's happening, I don't want somebody rubbing lotion on my hand if it's not the right lotion. I will be mad. So it's just kind of going over all those pieces. And because you're a step away from it and you're not as emotionally connected, you can have that unbiased approach to it and, you know, kind of bring up all these different things that maybe they would be uncomfortable with a family member, you know, discussing and kind of making plans moving forward. So there's tons of tools out there.
And I imagine that because a part of some of what it made me think as well. So years ago, when I was still working in Montreal, in one of my first job as a social worker, I had the privilege to work with this beautiful palliative care team that was working with children. I was in a children's hospital, and we were having regular conversations that I know are still happening 20 years later about how we still have a tendency in our medical system and in life to bring in people who have this end of life expertise and experience and capacity and skills to have conversations very close to the end of life, where actually we could start, to your point, not when we're in a crisis, when it's possible. I get that it's not always possible, but when it's possible, let's start to have these conversations earlier on. And I imagine you can adjust, like you can update, like it's not oh my God, I said I like that song and I hate it now and it's reminding me of this, like you can change things. It's not like, this is it, you told me that's what's going to happen. You can adjust.
Yeah, even your advanced directives, if you put a DNR, so a do not resuscitate order in place, and you get closer to end of life and you decide you don't want that, you can change that. You're
Mhm.
never not in control of that until you're unconscious. And then you have to have somebody that you trust to make the right choice. And sometimes that's not always the person closest to you. So, my husband, I don't know if he'd be like, yeah, yank the plug unless she's done. He'd be like, no, save her. And I'd be like, no, screaming inside my body. So you need to make sure it's somebody that you can trust to kind of fulfill your wishes. Or if it is somebody close to you, that they're on board and that they're capable of doing what needs to be done.
Yes, that is important. And I guess someone who has your training can be helpful and useful in checking in with people, in the sense that, we all do things. People have done their will in our community because, again, mortality has become something very real. Many people have went there, but sometimes you almost kind of forget what you've decided, forget. So to have someone who can accompany you in some of those, let's check in. Where are you at now today? And depending on how disease, like for some people, like they can live years healthy, and cancer might not even come back into their lives. But as we know in our community, for some, it lives with them and it's going to
Mhm.
die with them. So then to have those types of conversations is so great. Do you know if this in Canada anyway, is this a growing role? Are there more and more end of life doula?
Yeah, it seems to be more and more, and they're trying to get together kind of a broad association so that they can have certain care guidelines to make sure that you don't kind of overstep. So with the association that's local to me, there's things like you can't administer even Advil. You can't give them vitamins. You need to be hands off for the professionals, for the medical professionals to do those things.
Mhm.
But there seems to be a lot more popping up kind of everywhere. I've heard of lots of people that just I know of that have taken the course that are looking to get into it in some way. Um, and I find it really, I was at an office last week and the receptionist started talking to me out of the blue and full on broke down and was crying. And her husband just passed in December. He was diagnosed with cancer. And it was such a traumatic experience for her because nobody told her what to prepare for. So the sights, the sounds, the smells, if you have not been with somebody who's passing, those can be so traumatic for somebody when they don't have somebody there, just even to support them to go, this is normal, or this is what we're going to see next, to just kind of hold their hand and walk them through. So the end of life doula can help the living just as much as they can help the passing, in
Mhm.
that you're caring for that whole unit, not just the one who's passing. And so I'm really hoping that it keeps growing and that it just becomes super mainstream, that they're just everywhere. And so you don't have to actually like buy you can buy me. You don't have to pay for an end of life doula. There are like hospice. If you go through hospice, they will have volunteers that will sit vigil, but you're also kind of at the whim of whoever's happened to be volunteering that day. Whereas if you were to hire an end of life doula, you get the same person, you get a consistent support all the way through, which can be really nice for a lot of people. So
Yes, you develop a relationship all the
mhm.
way, yeah, to the end, which is great. This is so neat. And I'm with you. Like, I would love I did, again, years ago, I did in Montreal. They used to, which doesn't exist anymore, sadly, but they used to have this, like, it's like master level, but not a master. I didn't do my master, but on death and dying. And you had anthropological approaches. You had a lot of conversations on death in our society, death for us, death in different cultures. And to me, that was an eye-opening, amazing experience. Luce was the teacher I had the most. She was incredible. But I hope that there is a pickup of that, and that more conversations are taking place, especially right now with medical assistance in dying made. They are just making some changes in the law in Canada. I think those types of initiatives are going to bring new conversations about talking about death without being terrified of it, and doing it in a comforting way. Do you find, so in our community, obviously, part of, as we say, the catch 22 of joining a cancer community and making friends and loving people is losing people as well. Has any of your training and experiences as a death doula helped you cope with the losses in our community?
I think more it's helped me find a way to be present before the actual loss. So I
Mm.
think after I was diagnosed, I became very comfortable with death. And it was just kind of a very, not so much a clinical view, but I just have a very kind of fundamental understanding that it just happens. There is no rhyme or reason. It is not right. There's a lot of terrible people that would probably deserve to die, and they get to live a long, healthy life. And sometimes beautiful, wonderful, caring, kind people get taken far too soon, and there is just no rhyme or reason to it. So um, I find when I lose somebody, I focus on my memories, and I focus on the love, and I focus on the care and the good times that we had. And I welcome those to kind of bubble up whenever they want to. And sometimes I'll just start crying in the car on the way to work and be like, oh, I miss you. Or, I'll go to do a party invite on Facebook and I'll see their name as I scroll. And I always stop and I just kind of take a breath and I'm like, yeah, I still miss you, So I find I kind of already had that fundamental kind of set idea of death and how I dealt with that. But the end of life doula has allowed me to kind of be there, and given me kind of the ability to just kind of speak up and say those things that maybe other people are scared to. We're like, hey, have you thought about this? What about this for an idea? If you need any help, let me know. There's so many things you can do. There's so many like any legacies that you want to leave behind, just like I did for my kids, letters or recordings, or there's so many different things that you can do. And if you don't have somebody bring it up and say, hey, this could be really helpful, it's not always thought of, or you feel morbid for thinking of it as opposed to feeling proactive and like you're taking control. And that's, I find towards the end of life, there's so many things that are beyond your control. Anything that can be in your control is so empowering, and it just gives that little bit back to yourself when you're losing so much.
Yes. Boom, Amber. Lots of truth in there. We have if anyone is watching this today, every at YACC, every last Saturday of April, we have a day that is YACC Remembers, and it is a day where we take the time to remember the community members that we've loved and lost and still love, and to your point, still miss. But it is a time where we can kind of sit as a community and have this ritual, because I guess ritual, like a lot of what you spoke to about today, are ritualistic measures we can take leading to our death. So there are some more concrete legal pieces that we can put in place, but there's also all of those rituals. We can writing letters, making videos, throwing things, rocks. Like we can think of a lot of different rituals, but what we do on the last Saturday of each April every year is part of the rituals we've developed, because we have such a big community across the country. And we can't all be together. We can't all go to funerals, which is an important ritual, I think. And so because of that, we do that day. So hopefully this year, in 2021, it's going to be April 24th, depending on when you're watching this episode. It might be past or coming, but it's the last Saturday of each year. So I feel like there's a whole lot more that could be said, obviously, about end of life and death doula. But if someone who's listening would like to start this process, like, do you have any pointers on where to start, how to look for that, even if the person is not necessarily at the end of their lives?
Mm-hmm. Basically, anywhere you live, if you do a Google search, you will find people that pop up. And it's really important to find one that you're comfortable with. And so most of them will have an initial meeting with you. And then you can decide if you feel like it's a good fit, if you feel like that energy connects, or whatever it is that gives you peace. And then you can always inquire online and just, what services do you offer? And, it might just start with paperwork and kind of filling out and going, what are your desires? What are your wants towards end of life? And they can give you those questions to think about that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have. So definitely reach out to them, talk to them, feel it out, see if it's comfortable. You want to have a connection with them. And you just got to do what's right for you, because there's no wrong answer in death, because it's yours and nobody else's.
Yes. And it's in many ways, it's like picking a therapist or picking like in a sense that you can start exploring, but it does have to be a good fit. And you do have, and I'm thinking of all of our community members who might have different beliefs, be members of like different community groups, religions, all of those things have to be taken into account to make sure that as much as you're ready to explore whatever you plan, feels like you and looks like you. And I think that's where it can be quite liberating to have those things. Since I know, since, well, you and I have known each other for a long time, and we have another yacker I'm thinking of, Sarah, who I know has done her Doula training. And those conversations to me personally have been with my parents. Sometimes I'm like, okay, sure, you want to be in a church, or but to have to start to have those conversations, even with, for me, I don't really want to imagine my life without my parents, but it's coming, it's going to happen. So what do they want? Are there any
Mhm.
things, any songs? So it's the more kind of like outside of you've done your will. And I do love that it's really kind of got me thinking about this a bit more. And I love that we did this episode today for all of our community members who might didn't know that this was something that is possible, or who might have thought, well, maybe should I, shouldn't I? And ultimately, I would say, well, explore. There's no harm in exploring, right? Check it
Mhm.
out, see if it's the right time for you, and pick the right person. Ultimately, that's what we're saying.
Absolutely.
Any last words of wisdom you would like to share with our community?
Um, I would just love to say find a way to be comfortable in the uncomfortable and start the conversation and see how you feel, see where it leads. You might be surprised what you learn about yourself and what's important and what you want to see in the future.
Yes, be comfortable in the uncomfortable. I think it's a pretty good advice in life in general. In the days we're living in right now, we're still kind of in this pandemic period, which I think have made loss and end of life quite challenging for many people. But ultimately, starting the conversation is huge. Thank you so much, Amber, for taking the time to have this chat with me today. I hope everyone who watched enjoyed and found it helpful and interesting, and maybe kind of got you curious to say, well, maybe I'm going to check some of this out. And until next week, when we see each other again, as I do every week, I remind myself and anyone who can use it to remember to just breathe, breathe, breathe as often as needed in all of the moments throughout your day. We can be influenced by so much from the outside, even what we talked about, even what we want for the end of our life can be so influenced by outside people, expectation, desires. So when we stop and just breathe and connect with ourselves, with our inner being, it's easier to have clarity and to hear what we want, what can help us. So I encourage all of us to take moments throughout each day to just breathe. Hope you have a good rest of the day. My belly, I don't know. I hope we can't hear my belly. I'm so hungry right now. It's been distracting. Thank you, my beautiful friend, for this conversation. And to everyone watching, have a great rest of the day or evening, and see you next week. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.